can understand. That should be, when we read any verse, that should be our meditation. Okay, Sanatana Goswami says, every syllable of Srimad Bhagavatam is a worshipable deity. Okay, so that should be our focus when we study. Next time, okay, I've heard this, so where is it actually located? Okay, so coming back to this, there is universe, Bhumandala, different dvipas. Central one is Jambudvipa, divided into 9 varshas. Centralmost one, that's what holds Sumeru mountain, we were discussing. And as far as Sumeru mountain is concerned, it's there, 84 yojanas above and 16 yojanas below. You will understand this more when we go to subterranean planets. For now, take it theoretically at least. 84 is above. Well, even then also you have to take it theoretically, but assume 84 is above and 16 below. Okay? And then it is surrounded by 4 pairs of mountains on all 4 sides. And then there is single mountain on all sides. And then you have the tall Kesharachala mountain, which are 20 different filaments connected together. So it's like a series of mountains connected. So this is the description we saw. We then saw the aerial view of the different varshas in relation to Mount Sumeru. So Mount Sumeru is there in the center in Ilavarta Varsha. That's the 4 pairs of mountains surrounded by these big mountains, then surrounded by Kesharachala mountain. Then each one of those different varshas, they are placed symmetrically around Mount Sumeru. We also discussed about who are the presiding deities in each one of them and who are the key inhabitants in each one of these different varshas of Jambudvipa. Okay, we were also discussing how in Satya Yuga and Treta Yuga, the kings were ruling the entire Bhumandala. When Yudhishthir Maharaj was actually ruling in Dwapara Yuga, he was ruling the entire Jambudvipa, centralmost island. Then in Kali Yuga it dwindled. We are only whichever kings, there is no kingship here, but they are ruling only tiny different fragments of that. Okay. So, and these are the presiding deities and the prayers which they actually offer. This is slide 7. The prayers that is offered by each one of these different key inhabitants, leading hordes of their followers, associates in their worship to their presiding deity. That section you can actually see in this slide. If you go to that section in Srimad Bhagavatam, it will tell you in detail what prayers they offer, what's their mood, so on and so forth. Okay, that brings us to the next chapter, which is Descent of Mother Ganga. Now the reason why Descent of Mother Ganga is mentioned here is if you simply follow the route which she traverses, you will get more familiarized with each one of these different aspects or each one of these different parts of Bhumandala. Okay, like for example, if you look at this chart, this is slide 8. Okay, her origin is from causal ocean. Okay, she arrives as a perspiration from the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is causal ocean. When Vamanadev was scaling the entire universe in 3 paces, when he took with his left foot, he pierced open the shell, and through that shell hole, causal ocean water seeps in, and then she comes into our particular universe. Okay, so origin is causal ocean. So from causal ocean, she then comes in. Causal ocean, if you see, the universe is actually floating in causal ocean. Through that hole, the water of causal ocean comes. It traverses the first 4 higher planetary system, which is Maharjanas, Tapas, Satya, all 4. From the time she starts to seep in into the whole of the universe to the time she reaches
Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihare Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihare Hare. Kapijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhare Jaya Girivaradhare. Yashodanandana Prajajandarandana Yashodanandana Prajajandarandana Yashodanandana Prajajandarandana Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachare Yamuna Tira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihare Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakaacharya Ashtottara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Shila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakaacharya Ashtottara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhiraye Nashtaprayeshu Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Reading from the 10th canto, 30th chapter, text 28. Anayaradito nunam Anayaradito nunam Bhagavan Haririshwaraha. Bhagavan Haririshwaraha. Yanno Vihaya Govinda. Prito Yam Anayadraha. Anayaradito Nunam. Bhagavan Haririshwaraha. Yanno Vihaya Govinda. Prito Yam Anayadraha. Anayaradito Nunam. Bhagavan Haririshwaraha. Yanno Vihaya Govinda. Prito Yam Anayadraha. Anayaradito Nunam. Bhagavan Haririshwaraha. Yanno Vihaya Govinda. Prito Yam Anayadraha. Nayadradito Nunam. Bhagavan Haririshwaraha. Yanno Vihaya Govinda. Prito Yam Anayadraha. Anayaradito Nunam. Bhagavan Haririshwaraha. Yanno Vihaya Govinda. Prito Yam Anayadraha. Word by word translation. Anaya, by her. Aradita, perfectly worshipped. Nunam, certainly. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Harihi, Lord Krishna. Ishwaraha, the supreme controller. Yat, in as much as. Naha, us. Vihaya, rejecting. Govindaha, Lord Govinda. Pritaha, pleased. Yam, whom. Anayat, led. Rahaha, to a secluded place. Translation and purport by disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Certainly, this particular gopi has perfectly worshipped the all-powerful personality of Godhead, Govinda, since he was so pleased with her that he abandoned the rest of us and brought her to a secluded place. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that the word Aradhita refers to Srimati Radharani. He comments, the sage Sukadeva Goswami has tried with all endeavor to keep her name hidden, but now it automatically shines forth from the moon of his mouth. That he has spoken her name is indeed her mercy, and thus the word Aradhita is like the rumbling of a kettle drum, sounded to announce her great good fortune. Although the gopis spoke as if jealous of Srimati Radharani, they were actually ecstatic to see that she had captured Sri Krishna. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti quotes the following detailed description of Srimati Radharani's footsteps, as given by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Sri Ujjvala Nilamani. At the base of her large toe of her left foot is the mark of a barley corn. Below that mark is a disc. Below the disc is an umbrella, and below the umbrella is a bracelet. A vertical line extends from the middle of her foot to the juncture of her large and second toes. At the base of the middle toe is a lotus. Below that is a flag with a banner, and below the flag is a creeper together with a flower. At the base of her small toe is an elephant goad, and upon her heel is a half moon. Thus there are 11 marks on her left foot. At the base of the large toe of her right foot is a conch shell, and below that a spear. At the base of the small toe of her right foot is a sacrificial altar. below that an earring, and below the earring a spear. Along the base of the second, third, fourth, and small toes is the mark of a mountain, below which is a chariot, and on the heel is a fish. Thus altogether there are 19 distinguishing marks on the soles of Srimati Radharani's lotus feet. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamhayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradhayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tushe Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas, both assembled and online and otherwise, because this topic and this day is very, very auspicious and very difficult to speak on. But I seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas so that as Prabhupada wanted it to be represented, I may try to represent it. The glories of Srimati Radharani are actually very, very difficult to speak on, because her love for Krishna is not understood even by those who are pure in their heart. This particular verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is considered by the Acharyas to be the very pinnacle of Srimad Bhagavatam, because it shows the specific glories of Srimati Radharani. In this chapter, of course, speaks about the gopis searching for Krishna after Krishna left the rasa dance. So they were wandering in the forest, and at that point, text 26 says, the gopis began following Krishna's path as shown by his many footprints. But when they saw that these prints were thoroughly intermixed with those of his dearmost consort, they became perturbed and spoke as follows. Now, just prior to this, of course, the gopis had found Krishna's footprint. Now, in Vrindavan, nobody touches Krishna's footprint. Whenever it makes its mark on the soft sand, and the dust of Vrindavan is very, very soft. It is soft to act as a cushion for Krishna's lotus feet, for Srimati Radharani's lotus feet, for the devotees' lotus feet. And whenever Krishna's footprint makes a mark there, with all its symbols, it stays in the dust, and none of the devotees touch that lotus feet. So the gopis found Krishna's lotus feet, and they found Krishna's lotus feet walking in a particular direction. But then, and so therefore, text 25 in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a description in the purport of the symbols of Krishna's lotus feet, because those were the symbols that they saw when they were following Krishna's lotus feet. Then in text 26 it is described that as they began to follow those feet, initially they only saw one set of feet because Krishna was carrying Srimati Radharani. But then at that point they suddenly saw that the footprints were mixed with other footprints. And although it is not directly mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, the phrase used is Vadva Pade Su Priktani. Su Vadva here refers to special consort. So the translation says, were intermixed with those of his dearmost consort, they became perturbed. So they saw a mixture of 2 feet, and they saw one set of footprints which were firmer, and they saw another set of footprints which were lighter on the sand. And by seeing the lighter footprint, they understood that this was a girl's footprint. Furthermore, they saw distinguishing marks of those second set of footprints. And then they understood, actually there were three groups of gopis. One were Srimati Radharani's personal associates and friends. Then there were the neutral gopis. And then there were the gopis of the opposite camp. Only the gopis of Srimati Radharani's camp recognized the footprints. Recognizing the footprints, they understood it was Srimati Radhika. Then text 27 says, here we see the footprints of some gopi, they say, who must have been walking along with the son of Nanda Maharaj. He must have put his arm on her shoulder, just as an elephant rests his trunk on the shoulder of an accompanying she-elephant. So this description is given to say that just as a male elephant puts its trunk on a female elephant out of desire and pleasure, Krishna had taken personal interest in taking this particular gopi away. It also indicates that Krishna had held Srimati Radharani's hand because it was dark. There was no visibility. And Srimati Radharani was stumbling as they were walking away. But Krishna quickly just put his arm around her. I believe it was the left hand. And putting his left hand on her, he quickly whisked her away so that he could take her to a secluded place quickly. He was very eager to be with this very particular and special gopi. So then text 28, this is when they began to recognize the Srimati Radharani's particular associates, recognized Srimati Radharani's print. And they say, Anaya aradito nunam, by this particular one. And Sukadev Goswami here does not mention her name. In fact, the name of any of the gopis is not mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. But here it says, Anaya aradito nunam. And their conclusion is this: Krishna has he has left every one of us, and leaving every one of us with specific intent and desire, in a hurried way, he has whisked away one gopi and wishes to go into a secluded place to relish pastimes with her. So that gopi must be someone extraordinarily special. Anaya, by her, aradito nunam. Aradhana refers to worship. And this term aradhana is the term from which one understands the name Radha. In the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, some critics point out, as mentioned in the purport, that Srimati Radharani's name is not mentioned in the purport. There was one Acharya in the Sri Sampradaya who also once indicated, how can you speak about Srimati Radharani when in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimati Radharani's name does not appear? But Srila Prabhupada comments that Srimati Radharani's name, in fact, is in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it is present in the form of this phrase, Aradhita, because there's nobody who worships Krishna as perfectly and as completely as Srimati Radharani does. So, Anaya Aradhito Nunam, by understanding that Krishna had specific intent in taking this particular gopi away, knowing that Krishna is not somebody who is carried away by just mundane feelings of lust, understanding that the person he must have taken away must be someone who had perfected her devotional, whose perfection in devotional service surpassed that of everyone else. Understanding that her devotional service must be more pleasing to Krishna than anyone else, because every resident of the spiritual world, the residents of Vrindavan and the gopis present, their life was intended completely to please Krishna. And there was no sense of envy between them. Whoever could please Krishna the most was pushed forward to please Krishna. So, Anaya Aradhito Nunam, they understood if Krishna is taking this particular gopi away, then by her Krishna must be completely satisfied, much more so than by anybody else. Anaya Aradhito Nunam, Bhagavan Harir Ishvara, Yanna Vihaya Govinda, because he has left us, Yannaha, us, Vihaya, leaving us here, Govinda, Prito Yam Anayat Rahaha, in the secluded place, Rahaha, he is going to enjoy. This verse is actually quoted by Sri Ramananda Rai in his conversation with Lord Chaitanya, When Lord Chaitanya was asking Sri Ramananda Rai to speak about devotional service, to speak about the perfection of devotional service, Ramananda Rai started his conversation by speaking about bhakti performed through prescribed duties, because this is the basic platform of human life. And perhaps to understand Srimati Radharani's specific qualities, her specific devotion, it is important to begin the conversation with where Sri Ramananda Rai begins the conversation. And he begins the conversation by speaking about serving Krishna through one's day-to-day activities, because all of us deal with the material world in some way or the other. And the art of dealing with the material world is to carry out the activities in such a way that they become fit for offering to Krishna. This is the secret of Karma Yoga. So this is described by Ramananda Rai in the following verse. Varnashrama vacharata parena pumsam vishnur aradite na anya tattosha karanam. There is no other way of pleasing Krishna through material activities other than by following the rules and regulations of our Varnashrama dharma and making that as an offering to Krishna. By following the rules of our Varnashrama according to one's emotional or a psychophysical nature, those activities become fit. They come to the mode of goodness and they become fit for offering to Krishna. Any other means of performing one's prescribed duties in this world is not fit for offering. Lord Chaitanya looks at Ramananda Rai and says, "Can you please go further?" And Ramananda Rai begins to quote a sequence of verses that detail in deeper and deeper depths levels of devotion. He quotes the verse, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. And of course this verse can be understood in two ways. It can be understood as the path of full surrender. But Lord Chaitanya takes this point about Sarva dharman parityajya, giving up prescribed duties. And Lord Chaitanya says that devotional service has got nothing to do with prescribed duties. It is something completely different. Majority of people here in this world think of serving the Lord in some way that they can identify with in this world. If I am a father, mother, or if I'm a family member, I think that based on what I'm doing, oh Krishna, may you be pleased by what I'm doing. This is the conception of the majority of people. But Lord Chaitanya through the statement establishes that pleasing Krishna doesn't have anything to do with necessarily performing prescribed duties. Because Krishna's form, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's personality is completely separate from the material world. He has a completely separate identity and set of pastimes away from the material world. And therefore Lord Chaitanya says, well, speak more. And Ramananda Rai goes on. He quotes the verse, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, na shochati na kankshati. Lord Chaitanya says, speak more, because this verse implies that one has to have a sense of detachment from the material world and understand Krishna's all-pervasive energy, the all-pervasive spirit force that sustains the entire world. And Lord Chaitanya says that devotion to Krishna has got nothing to do with the material world, either in terms of giving up prescribed duties or in understanding that it is sustained by this Brahman energy. This Brahman energy is defined as the form of the Lord without qualities. But service to Krishna is based on direct attraction to his qualities and form. So please go on. Then Ramananda Rai quotes Brahma's prayer. He says that one who gives up jnana and follows completely the path of bhakti, he may be performing certain prescribed duties or he may not be performing prescribed duties. Wherever and whichever place he is in or she is in, just sit in that place. And by offering one's body, mind and words to Krishna, in that way, that Lord who is Ajita, who cannot be conquered, he can very easily be conquered. And this verse is the beginning of our ability to understand the spiritual world. The first verse, Varnashrama Vacharata, that describes our prescribed duties, is the fundamental platform of human life. And it is very, very different. It's much higher to what most of us perhaps were before we came into Srila Prabhupada's movement. Because most of us have activities that are quite splayed out and unregulated, or used to. And with those set of activities, where we simply act on instinct, we have no ability to even begin to understand what responsible human life actually is. But with this verse, Jnane prayasam udapasya namanta eva, this last of the verse that was quoted, Jnane prayasam udapasya namanta eva, when one gives up an attempt to cultivate knowledge of the spirit soul or seek to discover oneself separate from devotional service, and one focuses simply on hearing and chanting the pastimes of Krishna, then one can conquer the inconquerable Lord. So to hear about Krishna, Prabhupada says, both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, and of course the other literatures are given. But particularly Prabhupada says, the Bhagavad Gita is intended for us to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he says. And once we understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we can hear about his person in more detail. Because Krishna as a person has to be understood. This understanding is not present in practically the entire population, religious or irreligious. That Krishna is a person, he has personal tastes and a personal inclination. But understanding that point is the intention of the Bhagavad Gita. Understanding that he is pleased by direct devotional service, that one can worship him through different means of devotion, but the ultimate means to please him is to completely give oneself to hearing and chanting his names. Satam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhridavrata namasyantascha mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate mahatmanastu mam partha devim prakritimashita bhajanti ananya manaso jnatva bhutadim avyayam. One who enters into this realm of devotional service with complete faith that just by hearing and chanting about Krishna, completely separate from whatever else one is doing, one does not, if one feels that I need something else in my life, I need a career, I need something else in my back pocket, because I cannot give myself completely to Krishna, then one has not yet entered the realm of pure devotional service. If one feels that, even if 99% I give myself to Krishna, there's something, just even a minute in the day that I need for myself, a tea break, so to speak, I need for myself, then one still has further to go. And Prabhupada in a conversation says that even if one wants a laddu separate from Krishna, if one wants to enjoy a laddu, then one has to stay in the material world. But to enter the spiritual world, one has to aim to get this type of devotion, where one is prepared to give everything to Krishna, and where one understands that apart from Krishna, there's nothing else that I need in my life. Now, this beginning of actual spiritual activity, it starts with a very specific realization that is given in the Bhagavad Gita and is also expressed in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is where we will speak about this realization, there are 3 levels of hearing about Krishna that are described. The first level is to hear about Krishna in connection with the material world. And this level of realization is to help us understand that no matter where I go and what I see, I'm only actually experiencing contact with Krishna. It's Krishna's potency that is the strength behind the pillar, that is the support behind the floor, that is the comfort behind the cushion, that is the strength of any intelligence I or anybody else may have. Understanding this point, I understand that no matter where I'm going and what I'm looking for in this world, I am actually only seeking Krishna. If one is impressed by somebody else's strength, one understands that that is Krishna's potency. So rather than being attracted by the achievements of such an individual, why don't I just get directly attracted to Krishna? Or if I am attracted by someone's beauty, I should understand that their beauty or whatever qualities they may have, that beauty and those qualities, they come from Krishna. If I understand that point, then I will seek to be attracted by Krishna directly. Understanding this point is the reason that the Srimad Bhagavatam speaks on the topics of creation and secondary creation maintenance. Because in the second, third, and fourth cantos, it is very clearly established that it is Krishna alone who is the source of this entire material world. And he is the one who is all-pervading in his potencies everywhere. And he is the reason for which everything is being sustained. So that's the second, third, fourth, and fifth cantos. This realization is also expressed in the Bhagavad Gita with the verse, Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvam iti sa mahatma sudurlabha. When one understands Vasudeva sarvam iti, that Vasudeva is everything, and this is a specific knowledge of Krishna that is cultivated across several lifetimes. That the jnana in this verse does not refer to knowledge of the spirit soul. It refers to knowledge of Krishna. Bahunam janmanam ante, cultivating this knowledge of Krishna across several lifetimes. Jnanavan, he surrenders unto me, understanding Vasudeva sarvamiti. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. When he understands this, he becomes a Mahatma. And at this point, to the extent that he understands this point, he comes under the shelter of Srimati Radharani. He comes under the shelter of one who can inspire us to serve Krishna and please him with our services and our devotion. In fact, this particular verse is stated to be the very definition of a spiritual master. This is stated by a purport, verse 35 or 36 in chapter 1 of Adi Lila and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There Prabhupada writes that the definition of a spiritual master is one who opens his disciples' eyes to this realization, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Understanding this point, one can enter the realm of pure devotional service. The second manner of hearing of Krishna in the Srimad Bhagavatam is to hear about Krishna's pastimes in connection with his devotees who are situated in the material world. Because once we understand Krishna's power and his potencies, we surrender unto him. But that surrender is completed when we understand Krishna's mercy. And through various cantos, of course the third, fourth, fifth, but really from the sixth canto, then the seventh, eighth, ninth, we see Krishna's pastimes with his devotees who are situated in this world, who are either in difficulty or who are trying to achieve him, and we see how Krishna personally interacts with them in their life. In one conversation, Prabhupada writes that we read Srimad Bhagavatam to understand Krishna's power and Krishna's sweetness. He says these are the only two things that we read Srimad Bhagavatam for. The power component refers to Krishna's pastimes in connection with the material world. The sweetness refers to Krishna's pastimes in connection with his devotees who are situated in this material world. When we are conversant with these two types of topics, we understand that there's nothing in this world that is unsupported by, that does not come from the Lord, that is unsupported by the Lord, that ultimately this world does not go back and rest in him. When we're convinced of this point, we're convinced of Krishna's power. When we are convinced that Krishna is completely merciful and he will take care of us, in a general way, as is mentioned in the fifth canto, for every living entity he maintains and supports them, but as is expressed in the sixth canto, that even if we make a misstep or we have some difficulty, Krishna is there to hold us and to protect us and to lead us forward. Understanding this point convinces us of Krishna's sweetness, and realization of these two topics prepares us for the third topic, because understanding of these two topics, one takes our eyes away from the material world. That's the first topic. And then this realization of the second topic allows our eyes to be focused on Krishna in the spiritual world. And it is then we become ready for the topics of the 10th canto Bhagavatam, which speaks about Krishna's pastimes in connection with his eternal associates in the spiritual world. So the three levels of hearing about Krishna are: 1, Krishna in relationship to the material world; 2, Krishna in relationship to his devotees who are in this world; and 3, Krishna in relationship to his devotees in the eternal spiritual world. And the 10th canto, and therefore Prabhupada actually in the first canto, on the beginning of the Bhagavatam, he writes that Srimad Bhagavatam has to be read systematically. And the gradual realization that one acquires as one goes through the Srimad Bhagavatam prepares one for the 10th canto, which speaks about the ultimate shelter of the living entity. Across the 10th canto, there are many levels of devotional service that are described. There's the love of the residents of Vrindavan. There's the love of the residents of Mathura. There's a love of course, the same residents go to Dwaraka, but there's a special mood in Mathura. The love of the residents of Dwaraka. There's a love of the Pandavas in Hastinapur. There are different levels of devotion that are described throughout the 10th canto and of course the first canto also. But the 40-odd chapters that speak about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan are really special. When Uddhava goes to Vrindavan and he comes back, because Krishna sends Uddhava to Vrindavan after he has left, for two reasons. Externally, it is to help the gopis feel his presence. But actually, he also sends Uddhava to Vrindavan so that Uddhava can understand what the glories of Vrindavan are and broadcast those glories to the world. Because otherwise, how will people understand what Vrindavan actually is? Uddhava is a very, very close associate of the Lord. He's like a brother, a cousin brother. He's a cousin brother, so almost like an equal, but also in the mood of a servant. And he's practically Krishna's second in Dwaraka. He's Krishna's closest associate as a friend and as a partner in Dwaraka. And so Krishna wanted to give Uddhava some special mercy. He sent Uddhava with a message for the residents of Vrindavan and particularly for the gopis. He sent him to Vrindavan. And Uddhava, when he went to Vrindavan, that's that chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are verses that describe Vrindavan which is extremely happy and normal. And then he sees another side of Vrindavan where everything is morose. And the acharyas described that Krishna was allowing Uddhava to see two sides of Vrindavan. One part of Vrindavan was where Krishna was present in his unmanifested, aprakat pastimes. And the other part of Vrindavan was where Krishna had apparently left Vrindavan. And that was the Vrindavan which was almost dead, where there was no activity, no life present. And Uddhava got to see the difference in Vrindavan, where Krishna was personally manifest, and where Krishna was manifest in the mood of separation. When he went and then spoke to Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, he was amazed by the depth of absorption they had in remembering Krishna. He then went to the gopis, and his experience was such that when he came back to Dwaraka, his statement was, we can say that we love Krishna in some way, but in actual fact, we know nothing about loving Krishna. Because the mood of worship of these residents of Vrindavan is so deep and it is so intensely focused on Krishna that there's nobody else who can compare with that kind of love. And then he says, I want to just be a blade of grass situated somewhere in Vrindavan so that the footsteps of the gopis, the dust of their lotus feet, can fall upon me. And his intention is that it's not that he wants to be a gopi. He's fixed in his particular relationship with Krishna. But what he wants, what he desires, is that intensity of love alongside his own mood of service. And that's what he prays for. But even amongst the gopis, and this is the Ramananda Rai's conversation, as he continues from the verse Jnane Prayasamudapasya Namanta Eva, he continues the conversation describing deeper and deeper depths of devotion. And he begins to describe the different rasas in relationship to Krishna. He begins with Dasya, he then goes to Vatsalya, he then goes to, Sakya, then Vatsalya, and then he goes to Madhurya. But then Lord Chaitanya asks for more, and Ramananda Rai says, I've never heard of another person who has ever inquired beyond this point. And it is at that point he speaks about Srimati Radharani. He quotes two verses. one verse from the Padma Purana that speaks of as much as Krishna has affection for Radhakund, that much affection Krishna also has for Srimati Radharani. This verse is quoted by Srila Prabhupada in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in the Nectar of Instruction. But then he also quotes this verse, 10:30-28, that we read out today. Anaya radito nunam bhagavan harir ishvara. And this verse is considered to be the very pinnacle of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, there's a very specific mood of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas that needs to be spoken of. And this is called Radhadasyam. And that is what is indicated by this verse. Because when our acharyas say that this verse is the very pinnacle of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's an intent, there's a reason as to why they state that this verse is the pinnacle. It is because the mood revealed by Lord Chaitanya, Anarpita charim chirat karunaya vatirna kalau samarpayitum unnata ujjvala rasam swabhakti shriyam. Lord Chaitanya came to give a kind of love. He came to display a kind of love that had never been given before. And of course, it is his own swabhakti shriyam. It is the gift of his own pure devotional service, but in the mood of the gopis of Vrindavan. He himself came to taste Srimati Radharani's love for Krishna, to experience the happiness that she experiences in Krishna's association, and the qualities that she tastes, that only she tastes of Krishna's form and qualities and pastimes. Because it is a fact that the gift of pure devotional service is an increased appreciation of Krishna's form and qualities. That is the only way by which one can achieve an attraction for Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. To the extent and in the manner in which one serves Krishna purely, to that extent and in that way, Krishna reveals his glories. So it is described by Ramananda Rai that in Srimati Radharani's presence, Krishna manifests himself more completely than he does with anybody else. But but he manifests himself more completely than he does with anybody else. And so, when we as devotees we take shelter of Srimati Radharani, then in this mood of Radhadasyam, or more precisely, when the associates of Lord Chaitanya would manifest this mood of serving Srimati Radharani, they would be relishing Krishna's qualities in a very, very special and unique way. They would be relishing particular qualities of Krishna that were not relished by anybody else. There are a few instances in our Acharya's histories that reveal this particular mood. One is that of Raghunath Das Goswami, and of course it is understood that he would be drinking a cup of buttermilk every day. That was his only nourishment. But one day the servant would bring him this cup. He went to a particular part of Vrindavan which belonged to Chandravali, who is a rival gopi to Srimati Radharani, because there you get particular leaves that are slightly bigger, and he felt that Raghunath Das Goswami could drink a little bit more buttermilk. When he made the cup and presented it to Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami asked, where did this particular cup come from? And when he was told, he took the cup with its buttermilk and threw it away, and he said, don't you ever go there again. Now this particular mood is manifested by the manjaris who serve Srimati Radharani personally. They're about 8 or 9 years old, and they prepare Krishna's and Radharani's pastimes by preparing Srimati Radharani and by coordinating their meetings. So another instance that reveals this Radhadasyam was in Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's pastimes. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was present at Radhakund, and there was a devotee who was performing Dandavat Parikrama around Shamkund, and then he was performing Dandavat Parikrama around Radhakund. One of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples commented, isn't it so nice to see someone have so much respect for Radhakund? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, yes, but there's a difference between his mood and our mood. He's worshipping Srimati Radharani because she is dear to Krishna. We worship Srimati Radharani because we worship Krishna because he is dear to Srimati Radharani. This was a specific mood that was revealed by Lord Chaitanya and is considered to be the pinnacle of the realization offered. The reason for this particular mood of worship is because of this particular verse. It is stated in this verse that there's nobody who knows how to please Krishna more than Srimati Radharani. And those who are particular servants of Srimati Radharani, they know that it is impossible for Krishna to be pleased without Srimati Radharani. And so therefore, they understand that by serving Srimati Radharani, Krishna will be most pleased. Therefore, their worship of Srimati Radharani is on a deeper level, they have more affection for Srimati Radharani than they even do for Krishna. At our level, though, it is important for us, while it is important for us to understand this point about Radhadasam, because it is the highest part of our philosophy. It is a part of our philosophy, and it is something that is spoken. Yet, the path to achieving this is described in Upadeshamrita. The Upadeshamrita is actually revealed in a very confidential way, and here's the history of the Upadeshamrita. Once Lord Chaitanya was sitting near a kund in Jagannath Puri, and he had gone into a trance where he was serving Radha and Krishna, and he had just come out of that trance. Surrounding him were all of his associates. Rupa Goswami was also there. And just coming out of that trance, he began to very sweetly sing certain verses. The verses that he sang were recorded by Rupa Goswami and presented as Upadeshamrita. Now, these particular verses, they show from the very beginning how one can achieve this level of devotion. I think class time is over. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Chaitanya Gaur Premanand.